What's up, y'all? Welcome to Recess.
I'm Cash.
I'm with Chekia.
I'm Micah.
I'm Awate.
I'm Giassi. We're here with Creative Justice and Converge Media. We're going to be talking to you about Seattle artists, youth issues, and many more topics. Stay tuned.
Hey guys, it's Micah. Today I'm going to be talking with my dad about passions. Can you introduce yourself and tell a little bit about what you do?
Okay, my name is Robert Jeffrey. I'm senior pastor of Newark Baptist Church. I'm executive director of Black Holidays Task Force and economic organization in the city. And also vice chair of Community Development Institute.
Okay. So my first question, I want to ask about, so you do a lot of stuff, but specifically, what are you most passionate about?
Well, I think everything I do sort of encompasses my passion, and that is to try to create systems and structures that give hope to the community, to oppressed communities, with emphasis on the African American, the Black oppressed community.
Okay. How did you find that, or how did you become passionate about that?
Well, I wasn't always passionate about it, but I grew up very poor. I grew up in a family of 16 children, so we were very, very poor. And I've always, since my early teens, had a passion about why there's so much poverty in this country and so much displacement and so much hate and so much prejudice. And, my dad was a very brilliant person. He was a writer. He was a very, very brilliant person, but he grew up in a time when he was not able to exercise the brilliance that he had, and that always disturbed me. So, dealing with the marginalization of people in a so-called free society has always been a problem. And I think I became passionate about it in my early 20s.
So you also your main job, or what most people know you for is being a pastor.
Yeah.
So when you talk about helping marginalized communities, why did you choose to be a pastor as a way to do that?
Well, I think that, I became a pastor because I felt led to become a pastor, but primarily because my grandfather was a pastor, my dad. And the Black church is an institution. It is an institution that has longevity in America and has longevity in the Black community. It is probably the longest standing institution in the Black community. I think that one of the things that the Black church offers is a space to deal with a lot of these issues of discrimination, these issues of healing, these issues of how to create structures to help the community. I think historically it hasn't done that as well as it should have, but that's one of the reasons why I became a part of the Black church, so that I could help change the paradigm and create a new paradigm going forward, where there is a fusion between religious practices and the need to serve displaced and marginalized people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Seeing the impact of the church once you started kind of being taking a bigger role in the Black community, or once you started pastoring at places, what was the response to you? What was your community's response to you, and how did that did it change your trajectory, or did it just encourage you to keep going?
Well, the community, I think, the religious community, I think, has not always had a positive response to a lot of my trajectory. I mean, the religious community is in many ways trapped by the conditions, the prejudicial conditions, and the distorted perceptions of what Christianity and what religion, the purposes of religion is. And the purpose of religion is under the same kind of attack and marginalization as people are. I mean, they try to control religious expression so that it can fit in with their agenda. So many black churches are trapped in that agenda, and many theological expressions are trapped in that agenda. And so, yeah, a lot of the responses to me and to what I believe or have been negative, but you know, that's a part of the work. I mean, the part of the work is changing the paradigm, and part of changing the paradigm is to accept the reality of negativity and accept the reality of struggle, and hopefully you can be a part of that change that will ultimately take place over time, because the trajectory of the church right now, as it is not going to survive without change because of its continued marginalization of people, women, gays, LGBTQ community, all of that has to change if the church is going to survive. I mean, the church has to understand its role in helping to eliminate oppression, and if it doesn't, then it won't survive.
Yeah. How do you think you want to what do you think is the best kind of solution to contribute to that or to start changing that? Or what do you do to try and change that?
Well, we do, let's say on the level of economics, we have a farm where we raise organic vegetables. We give out 8 or 9 tons of food every year to the community. Organic food, we give it away. We have, we're working on a project now about gentrification, the King County Reparations Project, where we've identified 5 categories that have led to the gentrification of the central area: redlining, racial use of eminent domain, subprime lending, property taxation, which is a regressive tax system, which automatically weeds out poor people and people who are just middle income or the middle class. Really, has been weeded out of pretty much the central area. The upper middle class probably can survive, but very few people can survive the tax system and the mortgage payments at the same time. So these are things that we are looking at. And of course, the racial use of weed and seed and the abatement laws, which seized houses and ripped up lives, destroyed lives in the central area. So we're looking at these 5 categories, and we're doing a documentary. We finished a 40-minute representation of that documentary, and we'll be working on the documentary and trying to get it there. So those are things that we're doing right now, and along with the CDI, we're trying to work with organizations like Lehigh to build low-income housing in the central area. We got a couple of projects that we're working on.
Do you think, is there a project, whether it's now or in the past of your life, that you feel heavily connected to, or that you've or that has been your favorite, or that has had a big impact on you specifically?
Well, yeah, there was a project that I was heavily invested in, and that was Campaign 5000, which was to create a community endowment fund. The interest off of it would fuel business development, and the principal would stay invested. And we did that in the early 90s, but in the process, the church that I was pastoring burned down. And there was a fire, 2 fires. One fire destroyed the church, and then another fire while we were building sent black smoke up through all of the infrastructure of the church, which cost us $250,000 to try to clean out. those fires sort of destroyed that initiative. But I that's something I really regret.
Like, what about it do you regret? Like, not being able to, like, rebuild Campaign 5000? Or
Yeah, but by not being there are two things that destroyed it. One was the fire. The second was we had this big march, and we had a large number of gay and lesbian people who were joining us in the struggle because we had been working with the community for equal rights during that time, the early 90s. That was a struggle going on in Seattle. And they were marching in the march with us, and one of the ministers got up at the end of the rally and attacked the gay community, and in a way that I found just totally disturbing. I mean, it was really evil and awful. And I got up after that, but by the time I got up, most of that community had left me because they didn't come there for that. And they trusted me. She trusted me because they believed that that wouldn't happen. And I didn't. I felt that it wouldn't happen, but I was mistaken. The homophobic and misuse and misinterpretation of Scripture and the misogynistic misinterpretation of Scripture is really deeply ingrained in the Black church, because that Black church was born on the plantation and born out of the minds of the white overlords, and they gave all this misinformation and to propagate and perpetuate a system that they had set up. So it's, I thought that we were farther down the road than we were. And so that destroyed what we were trying to do, because we were trying to bring these communities together to assist in helping the Black community, but that didn't work. I mean, it blew up. Yeah.
In like times like that, when something you've made has kind of gone away, or it's been like destroyed by different things, how do you kind of reevaluate and go forward? Like, do you, because you haven't ever really given up, or I haven't seen you like really give up on something. I've seen you kind of change things or readapt things. So how do you go about doing that?
Well, I don't think that we can give up on trying to change the paradigm. I mean, I think that we're headed toward, just a civilization of where the elite rule and where certain mindsets are forced down the throats of everybody. That's never going to be sustainable. And all of us have a responsibility to keep moving forward. I mean, we can't take ourselves too seriously. We can't take what we come up with too seriously. We can't take our solutions too seriously. Our solutions are our solutions. They're contextual solutions. They're contextual things that we think make a difference, but we can't take them so seriously that when they're blown up, we think that the world has ended. I mean, yeah, that idea blew up. Okay, move on. I mean, there's another idea that you come up with that might not blow up. I mean, you can't in life take yourself so seriously that you're devastated because something you came up with does not work. I mean, after all, you came up with it. I mean, it's not like the whole world came together and said, let's do this. I mean, it was you in the context of your own room and your office. So, I mean, it's not universal. It's very contextual. All ideas are very contextual. And so you just move on to the next. And maybe that will be more connected to a universal idea that can move the agenda forward. But you can't take yourself or your ideas too seriously. I mean, you take them seriously until they explode and dissipate. Then you say, okay.
So be ready to let go of something.
You have to be ready always ready to let go. Because if you're not ready to let go, then that means you're saying something about who you are, which is not true. You're not the Messiah. You're not the Savior of the world. These ideas were not born in heaven. They keep me, you know, they might be inspired, but yeah, but they're not eternal. They're just ideas. And sometimes they work, sometimes they implode, sometimes they don't, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's good that they don't work. We don't know the answers to that. We just have to keep moving forward.
Kind of wrapping up, how do you think you want your work to affect youth today, or that you want your work to affect like today's generation?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. My work has always been with established institutions and trying to transform those institutions, hoping that if they transformed and if those systems changed, that they would affect youth. It has not been directly with young people because, you know, I don't know what to invite them into. I mean, it's just a mess. What do you invite them into? I mean, I was hoping that we could change things so that we wouldn't have to compel them to be a part of it, that they would want to be a part of it. And I think that to me, is the struggle. The isolation of young people from systems that no longer work and systems that basically died years ago, but people keep carrying them like zombies and resurrecting them and trying to make them do what they can no longer do and should no longer do. So I don't, you know, my hope is that young people will join that struggle and not give up on trying to transform these systems and these structures to meet what they want. Because after all, I can't set the agenda for this generation. They have to set their own agenda. I tried to set the agenda for the generation that I grew up in to change those systems. But I think that that's all of our task to try to do that because ultimately the world, society, a just society is dependent on it. So to answer your question, we have a youth farm. We do have a youth farm called the Rainbow Youth Farm, where we have about 30 young people that work on the farm in Seattle and in Duval. And we try to work with them about agricultural issues and stuff and things like that. And
Yeah.
Years ago, I brought together a lot of the gang leaders from all of the different types of gangs, and we tried to organize them to help them to go out and change the dynamic of the streets, but the city rejected that whole concept, and they fought that tooth and nail. And they, one of the people who was considered to be notorious, but who was a dear friend of mine, started to create a studio in one of our houses, and he was killed in a raid or something. So, I mean, yeah. So the thing is, you have to change the dynamic before we can save the kids. I mean, the dynamic is what has to be changed. It's nothing wrong with a lot of the young people. It's that they're up against a dynamic that is ridiculous, and they're being asked to do things that are ridiculous and to buy into stuff that is antiquated, that is 19th, 20th century stuff that should have been gone, and it's zombieistic stuff, and people just keep trying to make it work, and it is shown that it doesn't work. We've had world wars, we have all this stuff, you know, and they should understand that this doesn't work, but they keep trying to make it work. The colonial mindset won't let them stop.
So, yeah, yeah, I agree. Like a lot of the system, it's hard for like you to bring youth into something when it is already damaged, or when you don't want to expose like a new generation to all that pain and like suffering. But I also hear you saying that in a way you are doing that by not necessarily introducing them to that, but introducing them to like how you have radically expressed yourself.
Yeah.
So like farming, like
Yeah.
you've introduced youth to farming
Yeah.
to be like, hey, this is a way that you can feel free,
Yeah.
and feel like you can control your food intake.
Yeah.
So
And your food, because food systems are going to kill everybody if we don't start understanding how we create new food systems. I mean, we can do that, and we can actually get some land and start growing food systems and creating food system consciousnesses that are those are doable things.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, unless they buy, you know, those are doable things. I mean, you know, if we can do that, you're right. So yeah, that I feel good about, you know, young people learning how to farm and feed themselves, and then teaching them about the herbs and how they make teas and things like that to heal their bodies. And we've got people on our board who are going to be running classes. We're running classes, and right now, actually started yesterday with one of the schools, I won't call the name, that has contracted with us to run classes on nutrition and herbal healing and you know, and stuff like that, and creating teas that help heal the body and stuff like that. So I think that those are areas that we can control, we can take charge of.
yeah.
You know.
And in a way, I kind of like connecting back to the theme of like what we're talking about, like passions, like finding something that you are passionate about and that you can hold on to.
Yeah.
Do you think, like, for youth, this last question, how do you think people should navigate like pursuing something they're passionate about when they're facing certain systematic barriers or systematic oppression?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. I think you still have to pursue what you're passionate about, regardless of the obstacles and regardless of the systematic oppression that you go through. You know, that's very difficult because, like I told a story about my father, who was a very brilliant guy, whose brilliance was sort of squandered because of systematic oppression. And there are many people in my life that I've met who had brilliance that was squandered. And I don't know how much of my life, in terms of being a writer, doing other things besides what I'm doing, has been taken away, or at least marginalized and limited because of systematic oppression. So all I can say is you do the best that you can. You don't give up. You sometimes you can find your way through struggling against the systematic oppression that is keeping you down. Sometimes, like James Baldwin, a great writer, but a lot of his writings were about fighting against systematic oppression, but his brilliance comes through his books. And I think that sometimes as you deal with this systematic oppression, you can't just ignore it. You can't just go off and try to find your way without dealing with that oppression, because it's not just affecting you, it's affecting everybody else. So you can't just say, okay, I'm just gonna, this is my passion. I'm gonna go off and I'm gonna be a singer and I'm gonna do what I have to do to be successful, and just forget about the thing that's trying to prevent you from being that. You know, because there are other people who will not be as strong as you, and I think you kind of owe it to them to, go off and be the singer, but also keep in mind that I have a responsibility to deal with the thing that tried to stop me. I have to, every day I live, I have a responsibility to deal with the elements that tried to stop me, and not forget about that. And I think that's yes, pursue your passion, but also deal with the element that tried to stop you. So you have a double duty, which is the duty of most marginalized people in this society. We have double duty. We have hard work, and I know it's hard, and I know it's difficult, and a lot of people who make it forget about everybody that they leave behind, and I think that makes it even more difficult to undo all of this stuff, because they can point, well, he made it, but he's successful. and he's saying, like some of the actors, well, there is no racial prejudice anymore. Look at me. Those kinds of things, make it very difficult to undo a lot of the damage that's being done to many people who are not as fortunate, not as sometimes lucky, but who have the same gifts and talents, but they don't ever make it through the maze. But you have to try. You have to try to pursue your dreams. And at the same time, remember that you also have to struggle collectively against that thing which is trying to stop you. Because it's trying to stop everybody. It's not just you. It's not just about you. And we can never think in that way.
For like youth who are kind of like alone right now, or who don't have like as much support, or who don't have, like you had your grandfather and your father who are pastors, and who don't have something like that or a family lineage, do you have any advice for them on like how they should find their passion?
Look in your heart, look in your mind, trust who you are, trust your feelings. You're not crazy. You're not insane. You're born with certain instincts and certain things that you see, certain truths that you see. Believe those truths. Believe them, as long as they're rooted in love, as long as they're rooted in trying to make things better. Believe them. Don't let anybody convince you that you're crazy. Don't let anybody convince you that what you believe about yourself and what you should contribute is crazy. Just believe in yourself and follow that. Don't betray it. Don't betray it, because if you betray it, then you become a part of the problem. So don't betray that, and try to think strategically and systemically. How you can create things around you to help you be the best person you can be and do what you feel you were born to do.
Well, thank you. I think that's very good advice. Thank you for sitting down with me.
No, not a problem.
Thank you guys for tuning into Recess.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah. Thank you guys for tuning into Recess. See y'all next time.